Yeah, welcome to Let 'Em Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo, and pardon me while I check the latest results on the internet as far as what's been happening as far as the election. I guess this is election eve of election day, and we're waiting on the results, which are at the very earliest point right now. And my guest, Ty Black, welcome back to Let Them Talk.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to a conversation we're going to be having about what's going on in the election today. So I'm waiting for the latest results to reload here, but it looks like Donald Trump has won in several states. He's won in Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia. No surprise there. And it looks like that Hillary Clinton has won in Vermont. No surprise there. Bernie Sanders would have surely taken it if he was running. She's leading in Vermont, Ohio, and North Carolina. Now it has her leading in Florida, which I was surprised, but not winning, and Trump leading in Georgia, South Carolina, and Virginia. So I guess no surprises so far, and we'll be seeing what happens as the night goes on. But Ty, I mean, I'm glad we're having this opportunity to talk. What do you think of this? Have you been following this election? What do you think about this battle between the first woman candidate to seriously run for president and the orange-haired devil on the Republican side?
Yeah, I mean, I've been like at a minimum following it. I think it's like a big distraction, especially for the oppression for African Americans and blacks here as a whole in America. Neither of these candidates will lead us to salvation. We still have to do the work that we've been doing for maybe the past couple of years. You know, don't allow this election to make you too hopeful. Just continue to do the work and take it to the next level each time. Mm-hmm. You know, I think a lot of people want to go for Hillary because Trump is not in the best interest of more people. But neither one of them is in the best interest for black people. So,
Why do you say that? What brings you this? I have my own opinions, and I agree with what you're saying. But from your perspective, why do you think that Hillary Clinton, who seems to have so much African American support in the United States?
Because we're always hopeful. It's not, you know, people fall for illusions all the time. But the facts remain. When Bill Clinton was in office, the prison pipeline, you know, these are facts. The Clinton Foundation stole money from Haiti during their first hurricane. You know, she's more like sneaky. Well, even if it comes out, she doesn't address it much. She just lets it blow over, where Donald Trump is more vocal. So people don't like him, but she's, you know, really, really no better. And also, I think it's like what she's doing with the mothers of police brutality victims is distracting as well, because the topic went from saying police brutality to just saying gun violence, which gun violence is something that should be stopped, but it should be stopped from at the highest level. You know, how are these young children, you know, in the ghettos getting their hands on these weapons? If you really want to stop it, you'll stop it from the top. Not, you know.
So basically saying that if it wasn't for the prevalence of guns in poor neighborhoods, then the police wouldn't feel the need to shoot down people before.
And Eric Garner wasn't even murdered with a gun. He was murdered, you know, with the chokehold. So it's like she's real good, you know, the politicians.
Politicians.
Yeah, they just politicking. So,
politicking, I get it now. All right, politicking.
So they just good at playing word semantics. So you needed all these mothers of police brutality victims to get there and discuss gun violence. Well, why don't you address the first issue of why they're even there, which is police brutality? And I feel like none of them should be following her unless she is willing to go the extra mile in getting the police officers that murdered their children put behind bars.
Right.
So it's kind of like you're really not getting anything out of the deal but a whole bunch of talking.
Ty Black, I'm Paul Dorian. Let's let him talk. Let me. We're trying to something new. I have a Twitter handle, and we're going to post it. And I'm going to look at my feed here and give people an opportunity to send us messages and comments that we will then read and try and respond to using Twitter. That's my Twitter handle there @PDirienzo. And so we encourage people. We also have a call-in number. And I find sometimes we don't get really a very good response on the call-in number. I'm hoping that we will tonight. But maybe for those people who might be a little shy when it comes to hearing their voice on television, might give them an opportunity to contact us by way of way of Twitter. Right. So it's right there @PDirienzo. It's an experiment. We haven't done this before. We might throw this into the mix here when we're doing our Let Them Talk in the future as well. So Ty, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to, because you've been doing some interesting stuff in the music and culture and arts world.
Yes, definitely. Music, it was what I was originally doing first. I've always grew up in like a activist type of background, so I did grow into my own activist level, and then now it's at this point, it's putting it together, the music and the activism. So the latest in music is I've actually revamped my Killer Cops record. Killer Cops, I originally released it in July 2014, like directly following the murder of Eric Garner. And since it was released, it's been, on the activist level, getting, recognition. They did write about it in the New York Times, along with Alicia Keys' records and other, credible artists. Performing at places, sometimes they cut the music off because they feel it's offensive. The police officers usually are there doing security. Just this summer, they had a jazz festival in Staten Island called Breathless, and they didn't know I was going to open up with the acapella version of Killer Cops, and some people were offended that I was calling the cops killers. And I just think doing music or even spoken word like this always makes the racists identify themselves. They just wanted to come out and hear some jazz and pretend to be down for justice for Eric Garner, but if you can't admit that he was murdered and Pantaleo and the other officers that helped him are killers, then you have an issue with somebody saying that. Then
one of the deepest tragedies. We've shown the video here numerous times on the show, as well as other programs on this network, and every time I see it, it sends chills through my spine. It's something that I would never want my children to see, but of course they must see it, and it's terrible that I have to disturb the people out there with these visuals, because I don't want to do that. But if the visuals didn't exist, I wouldn't have to, would I?
Exactly, and there's been more visuals after that, but
of course,
that video sparked off a new wave, within taking the movement to another level.
It's it's one thing, like the American military using drones and things like that from a distance. To kill from a distance is horrific and murderous. When you see somebody willing to really choke somebody to death on the street in broad daylight in front of the whole community and not feel in the slightest bit like they're doing something they should be ashamed of, it makes you think, well, I don't think anybody can walk the streets of feeling totally secure. Now, I was going to ask Ty, would it be asking too much if you tried acapella a few lines of your song so we know what it's about? Could I ask you for that?
Yeah, actually, okay, so the verse on the remix, I did do the remix with Intel, who was the son of Ugar from Wu-Tang. So it put a Staten Island and Brooklyn twist on it, made it a classic. So the verse from that is basically like this. Don't put me in the barrel and tell me I'm a crab if you gon' bust shots and hide behind a badge every 28 hours. We murk by cowards, seen 5-0, murk some like watching Power from Ramsey phone to YouTube. Worldwide we view who? Pantaleo murder Eric with his blue crew. So webcams for what? So y'all could cover up. Got Corinne Gaines in my membrane. Sandra Bland, I'm remembering. Black Powers, my heritage. Where they shoot a cop like I said it did. Blow the Ruger, mute a cube of that Black Panther lineage.
Wow, thank you for that. Appreciate it. And I'm sure it is quite controversial, but it should be. And I'm proud that we were able to promote, hear this on our air. So that said, can folks, find this? Is it on CD Baby or some of these other sites, Facebook or something like that?
Right now, the remix is on SoundCloud. So you can put it on SoundCloud, Killer Cops Remix, Queen Blizzy featuring Intel.
Okay.
Or you can get the original record. Just type it in on YouTube, Ty Black, Killer Cops, or I go as Queen Blizzy as well. The video is up there, and it's on Bandcamp, all these different sites. So,
right. Do you have any performances coming up?
Yeah, I definitely have some coming up. For the exact addresses, you may want to follow me on Facebook. Just type in Queen Blizzy. Blizzy is spelled Blizzy. So just Queen Blizzy, and if you're on Twitter, at Queen_Blizzy, and you can stay updated with whatever we have coming up here.
Right.
Usually now what I'm doing is putting like the hip hop with the educational programs.
Yeah.
We just did Kwanzaa in Staten Island a couple of Saturday, as a matter of fact. So I dropped the acapella there. So I kind of perform at the programs too, as well as hip hop events.
Where I haven't gotten, at least the site I'm looking at right now seems pretty conservative on the calls. They show Hillary leading in Florida, North Carolina, New Hampshire, and Ohio. Trump having won in Indiana, Kentucky, and West Virginia, leading in Virginia, South Carolina, and Georgia. So in a few minutes, I think we should be getting more results and find out if it's going to be a blowout or not. I found one of the stories that's sort of being lost in all of this, Ty, is the passing recently of the first female Attorney General of the United States, who was appointed by Bill Clinton, and during her, Janet Reno is her name, and during her term is when this entire pipeline to prison really began. I mean, she was the first, and in a way, she was supposed to be a progressive voice, the first female Attorney General ever, and yet that was the time when we heard Hillary Clinton's talk about predators and career predators. I forget her exact term, what it was. But this set up in motion the mass incarceration of literally millions. And I direct people, if you want to see it, if you haven't seen it yet, the folks out there to see the film The 13th, about the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which was supposed to end slavery, but had this one little it said, except for lawful imprisonment of convicted criminals, which, of course, why does the United States Constitution have to have that?
And yeah,
in thousands of years, criminals who are duly convicted have been punished without a constitution saying that they did have to be or could, and this brings up the whole issue of continuing the whole. This is an out for people to continue the whole concept of slavery, and we know from the Reconstruction period on, we had chain gangs and imprisonment and these petty laws that were used to arrest and re-enslave thousands and thousands of people, and went on to this very day.
Definitely, yeah. A lot of people don't realize that the prison system, they make like $1 billion a year off of us, free labor, and it's manipulated for African American youth to end up there because the government is real smart. So they know certain environments create certain issues, or certain environments can create a certain greatness.
Sure.
So when you look at the communities that a lot of African Americans are forced into live into, and it's infiltrated pretty much too. Guns in the community, drugs in the communities.
Right. So you're saying these things will be brought in. Now, there's
like a cycle, yeah.
Yeah, and as other guests I've had it brought on that killings happen within a community when honor becomes, the question of personal honor becomes of greater importance than it might be normally, right? Like a diss when you're comfortable, well off, you have a good job, and you have no threats to your existence that are really out there for you to see. So what? But when that's all you got is your word and your name, that could be a terrible thing.
Different.
Yeah.
And this is just the way the trap is set up. But just because there's a trap there doesn't mean that you can't outsmart it. So that's why I also work within educating, the oppressed within their communities, because we can actually outsmart some of those tricks, even though it does appear that we're playing up against a government that doesn't play fair. Because when I do research our history, I do see that we have overcome these obstacles before, only to get smacked in the face again. So it's like, I can understand why some people are just like, to hell with it. I'm just going to live, how I want to live.
Right. In other words, you can't win. You can't
It's
beat the system.
But I do know there is a way to do it. There is a way. So that's what keeps the drive going.
Right, and you seem to have found that through your art and through production and what have you, and helping other groups. Now, are you working with any other groups? You said you're working with folks from Rutan and
musically,
musically,
working with the next generation of Wu-Tang, which is Intel. He has a couple of other artists he got together with from the second generation. I have a record with Mr. Cheeks. It's called Styling on Them. So I do fun music too, but it's like with all just paying attention to what's going on, most of it does come out revolutionary, politically.
As a woman operating in what has been primarily a man's world, the hip hop world, and where some of the things that were said sort of rival. Donald Trump's trying to rival the worst of hip hop in a way. Have you found any within the hip hop or within the music community any problems, any prejudices and things like that as a woman that you've had to overcome, or not?
Yeah, because I've been doing music for a while now, so it's just now really becoming where. Now they got like I guess they're trying to push a gay agenda, so they have, more aggressive women out. But there was a time where everything had to be mostly like, slutty. But I still notice within the mainstream, they're very particular about the type of characters that they do want to put forth. And none of it has really reversed back to what hip hop is truly based on, and that's the fundamentals of hip hop, which it's actually principles, and knowledge is one of them, and they're pretty much trying to erase that. And when you do see knowledge in it, it's kind of like watered down. So what I feel to do is just bring hip hop back to the core, back to the streets where it originated at. And this way, when you hear it in these forums, it's 100% pure. And that's to me, we could take our economics back through supporting local artists or just revolutionary artists like myself that is not particularly chasing the mainstream, but making music with great content that also sounds great too.
And then using things like the internet to produce your own material and not go through those corporate
it'd be
channels,
good to slip through there once in a while. Something slips through the cracks. I'm the type of person that like, if you might not know I'm on a bill. I'll run, try to find my way how I'm gonna get there and relay this message. So,
okay, for folks, by the way, who are watching and want to know what's happening, we have the latest results are with 270 electoral votes needed to win. We have Trump leading in Alabama, Clinton leading in Connecticut, Clinton winning Delaware and D.C., leading in Florida, Trump leading in Georgia, winning Indiana and Kentucky, Clinton winning Maryland and Massachusetts, leading in Michigan and New Hampshire, winning in New Hampshire and New Jersey, leading in North Carolina and Ohio, Trump winning in Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, leading in Texas. She's leading. She won in Vermont. He's leading in Virginia and has won West Virginia. The other states are still waiting. Right now, Trump has a slight edge, 51 electoral votes to Clinton's 44, and 270 needed to win. It looks like it's going to be a long night. It's not a blowout. It's state for state.
Wow.
And it's a sad commentary, because before your time, in 1964, we had a guy named Goldwater who was similar to Trump, who was advocating nuclear war. In those days, that was the big issue, and like let's drop the bomb on the Ruskies was his sort of calling card when he was running for president, and he got blasted himself and winning one or two or three states, and the Democrat winning. nuclear war never happened, but then the Democrat led us into the Vietnam War for the next 10 years. And 1 million deaths and hundreds of and 50,000 Americans and millions of Vietnamese killed in the course of that war. And of course, the protests and demonstrations that we still talk about to this very day. We always compare, even Black Lives Matter, even Occupy Wall Street, we always compare, what was it, how does it compare to the 60s, right? The 60s were a great time. We have to take it one step further. There was a lot of sexism in the 60s, right? You know, we have famous statements of activists saying the only, women should basically be getting the coffee, you know. We had many, even in the white, even in the so-called liberal white community, women were always the people, making dinner, feeding people, cleaning up after the meeting was over. It was a very sexist type of thing, and we're hoping that we won't ignore 50% of our talent.
With Hillary, all I
the
wanna,
women of America, because I think Hillary in a way is like dragging us in a in another direction.
What I don't want is for as Black women who are fighting for Black liberation to put that on the back burner to join the women's fight like we did in the past, but to only still have to face our own oppression at the end of the day. So if Hillary is supposed to be leading like a new women's movement, and that's supposed to include Black women, then that should also include our true issues, because it's not just Black men being murdered by police. Sandra Bland, Corinne Gaines,
it's just
are those issues going to be included in this women's movement? So that's pretty much my only concern with moving forward.
Do you think that the idea of to split it into, to have a women's movement per se, as opposed to an African American freedom movement, is that a good idea, or do you think it might be?
No, I'm saying what I mean is for African American women to participate. They should be participating in Black liberation.
Right.
100%. But for them to engage their energy also into a women's movement, does that women's movement meet their concerns? Because we're being oppressed as well due to our skin color. So does it address Black women, or are you just trying to put us in one bowl?
Oppressed as women, oppressed as Black women.
It's a different fight.
Right. So both things happen in the community, right? That's very interesting. Do you think that is there adequate representation of women in the movements that are rising up now, in the movement against police brutality? I mean, there seems to be a lot of women in the leadership role, more than in the 60s.
Yeah, that is true, and I definitely think that there will be more growth in it moving forward. Originally, people didn't realize that the movement was and has been led by women recently, because it was only like putting out Mike Brown, Kai Gurley, these stories, and much of the women's stories were being pushed to the background. So once that began being addressed amongst the grassroots, now you see more, being vocal for when it happens to Black women as well. And there's other issues like domestic violence, and these things need to be addressed on a higher level too. So I do.
How do you think that should be done?
I think it should be within the same conversation, because if most of the domestic violence that Black women are enduring now is from Black men, so that is an internal issue that has to be addressed within the Black community for a mirror to be put up, because self-hatred has been indoctrinated into our communities. So everything needs to be broken down.
What do you mean by self-hatred?
You ever read or heard of the Willie Lynch letter?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, that's definitely something to research. And it's basically the fact that although slavery was abolished, during slavery there was ideologies that were instilled into the slaves that even after the chains were removed, they still are existent. Darker against lighter. The male figure against the female figure, the younger against the older, competitive. So these things still very much exist within our communities. And when I look at domestic violence issues, that's one of the things I'm seeing, as well as mostly drug abuse is, evident.
Right,
there.
right.
So
And alcohol. I think alcohol, when you look at it, is like,
Mm-hmm.
domestic abuse and alcohol are sort of like brothers and sisters, and they come together in
Indeed.
every community. But when you're poor, it affects you twice as bad.
And it affects the whole family structure, not just the woman, but
Right.
a lot of times there's children in the household, and it affects them as well. And they may go on to continue the cycle a lot of times of, they get older. And
So that's so
domestic
great what you're
violence.
doing, and trying to educate and use music and hip hop as in the way it was meant to, when like folks like
Indeed.
Kool Herc and the beginner in the beginning roots in the South Bronx and Harlem, when they first started it out, it was supposed to be a political thing. It's when the record companies took it over and they started presenting the Trump talk.
Playing
Trump
like
talk.
the devil's puppet, or we're going to water down their message and put this image out. Like if you go back and do the history and you see, each generation how they put a different image, the image gets worse.
Yeah.
And that is also imagery playing into the respect being lessened for the black woman within the black community. Now, when you
calling
look
people
at
hoes and things like that.
or they have to be out of their clothes, or
Yeah.
now they're letting in the image of
Two Live Crew, I think, was famous
like
for
AG.
that. Yeah.
But even when
What do
they
you mean by
letting
AG?
in,
I'm sorry.
my high school era, they called it AGs. Now they're called, I guess they're going back to calling it dykes or what have you.
Oh, I see.
But even they're being disrespectful to the feminine figure and the black community. It's like, what I'm seeing now is with the hip hop music, what they're putting on mainstream is it has to be disrespectful, which hip hop was always disrespectful, but disrespectful to others that were trying to oppress us. Now it's being disrespectful to our own. And it's like it refuses to be disrespectful to anybody else. And it's not so much that that type of music is not present. It's not what they're putting on the mainstream.
I see.
So,
Ty-
we have a choice. We can take back our own culture by listening to what you really want to hear.
Ty Black, thank you so much for joining us. So what a very
Thanks for having
interesting
me.
program, and great to have you on. We're going to have to have you on again to talk more about this. Thanks for the performance. Thanks for helping comment on this election, the terrific election between two unpalatable candidates. And we have another way forward with young women like yourself, who are so important and are true leaders of our people. So thank you very much, and
Thanks
we'll
for
see you
having
next
me.
week. And
All
don't
right.
fret the election.